12 o'clock here on your Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. It is now the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford around here somewhere. I assume he'll be here very soon, as he is usually fashionably late after a couple of minutes. And we're continuing to chase the saga of what is going to happen with the South Carolina baseball program now that you moved on from Coach Kingston, as we are now 25 hours removed from when Kingston was let go yesterday, just before 11 o'clock here at South Carolina, and in the 24 hours since. And we talked about this a lot yesterday on the show. A lot of names popping up. You know, David Cloninger was reporting on some names. Our guy Wes Mitchell threw some names out there. Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball talking about some names that are interested or that South Carolina is going to be pursuing when it comes to this head coaching job here for the Gamecocks. And look, all these guys would be good fits in a way. I don't know what constitutes the perfect hire. I don't know what, and look, everybody's opinions are different, because we asked the question as soon as Kingston got fired, really, of who do you want? And we got everything from keep Monty Lee, bring in Landon Powell, go out there and get Don McDonald, all kinds of names out there. And you're not wrong for thinking what you're thinking, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion because every guy brings something different to the table. But which of those guys can be the perfect fit? Which of those guys is really going to be able to come in here and be successful at South Carolina? And when we say be successful at South Carolina, be successful to the standard of what this fan base expects. And Wes and I were talking about this at the last, or, in that last hour of, what it takes to be successful here at South Carolina. You're going to have the opportunity and the resources at your disposal, really. You know what I mean? Like, you don't look at the South Carolina job and say, well, I know if fan support's going to be there, because it is. You don't look at the South Carolina job and say, man, they don't have any NIL, because they do. You have the support there. You have the ability to have the resources to go out there and build a roster if you need to. So this is a very attractive job. The question is this an elite job? Like, if every job were laid out on the table and you said, hey, you have your pick of the litter of whatever program in college baseball you're going to go and coach, is South Carolina in that conversation of being like in the top 10, like maybe it was 10 years ago? I don't necessarily know if that's the case, but it's still, I'd say, a pretty attractive job at the end of the day.
You know why? Thanks. Good to see you. And you can leave in a moment.
Okay.
Here's what the quick answer to what I heard there as I walked in. Is it the job it was 15 years ago? No. Because they haven't been in Omaha, right?
Right.
Been only 2 supers since then, right?
Right.
And the fancy facilities.
The Kingston era.
Right. It was the fancy facilities that were fancy, really fancy, are now good, but they've been passed by other schools who built fancier, correct?
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people bring up Founders Park could use a little sprucing up.
So is it still, now, is it a top 10 job right now? No. But you know what? This is why this hire is so important. You have gone over a decade since you've been in Omaha.
Right.
Kingston went to 2 supers. Chad go to 1 or none?
He went to...
You go to 1?
I believe he went to 2.
You go 2, so you've been to 4 supers since Omaha.
Right.
A decade in the world of recruiting is a long time.
Yes, because let's think about this from the perspective of the athletes you're recruiting right now. So the 17 and 18-year-olds that you're trying to bring in for 2025, they would have been
watching
6.
They'd have been watching Barney.
Yeah, they would have been 6 the last time you were in Omaha.
Exactly.
They have no cognitive memory of you being a great program.
Right. So you get this one wrong, and you go another 5, 6, 7 years, and you pick the wrong guy. Now you're pushing them 2 decades almost.
Yeah.
So that lineage of being an upper echelon program is pretty much wiped out to the current crop of folks who you're trying to bring in.
Right. And
that's why it's so important.
That's kind of the funny debate. We talk about teams like Nebraska and Tennessee that their heyday, was in the 90s of how long is that stuff relevant? until your current crop of players has no memory of it, I think is when it really kind of runs out of steam. And again, Carolina, you're kind of straddling that line because at least for those guys, their parents can be like, oh, well, I remember South Carolina in the early 2010s. Here's what they did, and, this year and that year. But these kids themselves, if they have not seen it themselves, it's not going to resonate the same way.
And that's why this is such an important hire. Why you got to get it right.
Right.
Because there's still a vague memory of it, but you don't get this one right, then by the time you try to correct the next one, the next crop of kids or even crop of, people in general who are coming up have no memory of you being this good.
Right.
And those guys on those teams, they're getting older. Then all of a sudden they're in their 30s and they're not playing in the majors anymore.
Yeah.
And there's no connection. Like right now you can still bring in a Christian Walker and have Christian Walker come talk to your guys. He's in the show.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
You got a few guys still dribbled in through there, Whit Merrifield. But if you go through another 5, 6, 7 years, then that connection to the major league guys who can show up and talk to your dudes.
Yeah.
The former guy who's sitting in his mid-late 30s and 40s and whatever, it's not the same as the guy who's in the show.
I guess the best way to describe it, you're at the bridge of relevancy right now. And you can stay on this side where you're still in that conversation, still be talked about, or you get pushed over the other side of the bridge where it's like, well, they used to be this, they used to be that, but they're not that anymore.
You don't want to be, right now you're looking over at the other end of the bridges. Hey, Nebraska football is waving hi to me. Wow, I don't want to be over there. I want to be over here with the relevant folks.
Right.
Because, that's the thing. Tennessee's trying to come back across the bridge.
Sure.
Now, it takes the right coach to get you back.
Yes.
You and I talked about this about Alabama this morning. After Bear left, really Stallings won a national title. It was 90-91, somewhere in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But after Stallings left,
nothing.
and all of a sudden, what was the line? And people forget this now. Well, Alabama's never going to be what they used to be. Yeah. It's Tuscaloosa. Who cares about that? They were just great because of the Bear. You're never going to be like that again because you're never going to have the Bear. Well,
exactly.
You're right. You got better than the Bear.
Yeah.
But, again, you got the right coach to make you relevant. That's what it takes. The right coach puts you back to relevancy.
For sure.
That's the big decision here that Ray Tanner has, is getting the guy now in a crucial crossroads moment to get you back to being that relevant program he used to be.
And while you want to hire quickly because the portal's open, you want to make sure you're retaining guys on your roster as well as bringing in guys from the portal. You also want to make sure you have a nice vetted out process and you make the right choice.
Getting it right is more important than 2025.
Yeah.
Because getting it right means 2026 and 27 and 28 and 29. If you lose that, nobody wants to lose Ethan Petrie. I get it. Dude's a a raker at the plate, right? He's going to be drafted. He's going to be that kind of guy. But you know what? Don't rush to keep Ethan Petrie or try to keep this guy or that guy or your recruits or whoever.
And Wes brought up a really good point in the last hour. Outside of Ethan Petrie, is there really anybody on this roster that you're dying to say, oh, my God, we got to keep that guy? Because it doesn't seem like there is, because you're looking at, you're going to lose Messina, you're going to lose Cassis, you're going to lose Nolan. Like, you're going to lose these key guys, whether it be from graduation, going to the draft, whatever it may be, that, Petrie's really the only one that you're saying, well, yes, we want to hang on to him, obviously, but that's really kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, no offense to your recruits, they're recruits.
Sure.
There's no guarantee, first of all, that the best recruit's even going to show up, because he's probably going to get drafted. He might get drafted in the first 3 rounds of the MLB draft, and guess what? If he gets the right dough, he's gone.
Sure.
And the last time I checked, the hit rate on recruits is not worth rushing into a decision.
The only thing about the recruits, and a lot of them were voicing their support for Monty Lee, which is why it's coming up in conversation here, is you don't want your recruiting class to just vanish and you're having to start over. So there is an aspect of that, but I agree with you. You don't know what these guys are going to be, so that should not be the driving factor on why you hire whoever you hire.
If you decide to hire Monty Lee, here's why: he's the best guy for the job.
As whoever you hire should be.
Right. It's not, because he coached with Ray Tanner. He loves South Carolina. He lives in a really nice house, in the Midlands. No, none of that matters. What matters is he the right guy for the job to make Carolina what they used to be? And that's the same thing for all of them. Don't hire somebody because they're a former Gamecock. Don't hire somebody because they're from Myrtle Beach. You hire somebody because they're the best. Again, I say this all the time. Dawn Staley from South Carolina? Was Ray Tanner from South Carolina?
No.
Was Steve Spurrier from South Carolina?
No.
No. And Frank Martin got you to the Final Four. Frank Martin from South Carolina?
Not to my knowledge.
Everyone does this everywhere. It's not just here. We all love our own. We all love the people that went to our alma mater or our favorite team school. We all love them. But it doesn't mean they're the right people for the jobs.
Well, and David Cloninger brought this up when he was talking to Jay and Elijah yesterday, because everybody jumped on the Landon Powell thing and doing great things in North Greenville.
Sure.
I mean, shout out to him and respect him for what he's doing up there. But he asked the question, would you care if he didn't play at South Carolina? Would you be looking at North Greenville, Division II school, saying, man, I like that coach, if he went to Tennessee?
But we gave you a blind resume and said this guy did all this at Division II. What would you be saying? You can't put a Division II coach in the SEC.
Yeah.
I mean, so, again, I understand it all. Because every fan base is like that about certain. Because again, they're your guys.
Sure.
But sometimes your guys aren't the best guys for the job.
That's true.
And it's just got to be the best guy for the job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's who you got to go get.
And based on what we've read and what's being reported on, there are some big names, some of the ones we talked about yesterday, that South Carolina seems to be taking a swing at, which that's the right thing you do.
And the other part of this plan is you should swing big. There's no doubt. South Carolina deserves a big dog. We talked about this yesterday. Go get a dude.
Yep.
Go get a dude that knows his way around Omaha.
Right.
But you know what else comes with that? Is you got to go to the ATM and get the money out to pay the dude.
Yes. Kingston saved you a lot of money by being one of the lowest paid coaches in the SEC. Now, use whatever you saved and get, his buyout, that totals out to $1 million with his annual salary. That's nothing at the end of the day compared to what you've been paying in the past couple of years. So you're going to have to pay in that 1.3, $1.5 million if you really want to go out there and get that coach we talked about yesterday, knows where Omaha is, knows the lay of the land out there.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to pay that guy 7 figures. You got to pay a fair amount for staff. You've also got to talk about what you do to improve facilities and things. So look, this is cha-ching.
Sure.
But that's the cha-ching. If you want to be what you used to be, that's part of this, is you got to you got to roll out the school's bank card and do some things you have to do because the SEC is a flat-out arms race.
It is.
A financial arms race. You got to pay to play.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to, if you want to be in the game, you got to bring a lot of chips.
That's right.
And that's the other part of this. There's a big name. You're going to be gone because I want you to go home. No offense to you. I love you deeply. Go home.
I'm okay with that.
There's a name we didn't talk about yesterday because I just didn't think it was worth talking about. But I saw it on a couple of lists, so we'll talk about this big name today. It's a good one. I don't think this is someone you would see coaching the Gamecocks, but the name did come up, so we should address it. And there's 2 other names we talked about yesterday I want to surface back on because as I was thinking about it and trying to do some research on it while people continually came into my office, I want to focus back on these 2 other candidates. So we're going to talk some more candidates while you're driving home.
Okay.
That's
I look
coming
forward
up next.
to listening to it.
And thank you very much, sir, for hanging the first couple minutes for me. I do appreciate it like always. Halftime show. Ed Bird's here. He's going to punch some buttons and get it going. And we're going to roll this baby till 3 here on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford hanging out with you. We've decided to let Tyler go home for the day. Also, Tyler will go home for the day tomorrow. And we'll hang here doing noon to 3. Then Tyler will be in for Gunner as Bill. They're going some cruise, I think. Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. So Tyler will be hanging out on the early game with Preston and Jen. Alrighty, so as we continue our conversation on who is going to be the head baseball coach of South Carolina, one name we didn't bring up yesterday because I just didn't think it was a name, not to say not worthy, because obviously this dude would be phenomenal. I just didn't think he would be a candidate for a couple of reasons. Brian O'Connor at Virginia. Now, Brian O'Connor's resume is sick, right? 5-time ACC Coach of the Year, 3-time National Coach of the Year. Has been 6 times, I believe, to the College World Series. 21 years at Virginia, making $1.13 million. I'm like, this guy didn't want to leave Virginia. He's got it made. It's perfect. He's making 7 figures. They love him. I mean, it's not the pressure cooker of the SEC. Look, the ACC is a really good baseball league. What, they got 5 teams in the Supers? But it's not the SEC. And it wouldn't be the pressure cooker that South Carolina would be, or a lot of SEC schools. Brian O'Connor's got it made, man. You put your feet up. Like I said, your direct deposit looks good. You got 5 50-win seasons. You've been to the NCAA tournament 15 times in a row. I mean, you have no reason to leave. The only reason would be you want to go compete in the best league in America. And you want to do it at a place that has a passion for baseball and has a history of being an upper echelon program. That would be the 2 pulls. Now, obviously, you got to pay O'Brien more than $1.13 million. You're going to have to kick him up there, probably that 1.5 range we've been talking about. And honestly, would Brian O'Connor even be interested? I was surprised I saw him on a couple of lists. I just thought, yeah, that guy, he's good where he's at. I mean, is it a guy that you check through the back channels when you start all this? Absolutely. But, look, stranger, kookier things have happened, right? But Brian O'Connor would definitely be on the top of your list. Because that we talk about having a dude, that's a dude. He's been to Omaha so much, he probably has a home there. I mean, whew. But I just don't, I just didn't think that would be, I didn't see his name on some early lists. And then when you look at it, you're like, guy don't want to leave. Been in 2 decades in Charlottesville. And again, as I've continued, trolling around on lists, I did find Brian O'Connor's name on a couple. So, again, could these just be your basic lists of throwing a lot of different names together and making a list because, your editor said make a list? Sure. There might be no smoke to it at all. It could be, Brian O'Connor's agent saying, let's make it look like old Brian's wanted by South Carolina. Maybe we can get more money out of Virginia. I don't know. But Brian O'Connor's name did pop up a couple of times, and obviously that resume overall could be the best of all the resumes. I just don't think O'Connor would want to leave Virginia, but I want to put it out there. 2 other interesting names on this list. We talked about them yesterday, but I want to go a little deeper on it today. One that we talked about getting a dude, a guy who has been to Omaha, who can lead your program to Omaha. And one of the names out there is Dan McDonnell at Louisville. Now, McDonnell, another fabulous resume. Has been to the College World Series, 5 times? Huge winning percentage, almost 70%. But the last couple of years have not been great. And I'm looking at Kendall Rogers' post on D1 Baseball with the South Carolina Gamecock coaching hot board. And when he talks about McDonnell, I want to get to this real quick. McDonald is an exceptional coach, but he will need to be prepared to heavily utilize NIL dollars in the transfer portal at South Carolina. Reluctance to do that will lead to the Gamecocks' demise. McDonald going to South Carolina could be a classic new environment leading to elite results. But again, I go back to this. If you're a McDonald, your hesitancy to go through the new world order of coaching, which is NIL and transfer portal, you can't be Dabo. You can't be. McDonald has to be open to using the transfer portal, using the NIL, understanding you have to leverage those things to acquire talent. You can't shut down a talent pipeline. So if McDonald is not going to get into the new world of what goes on regarding talent acquisition, transfer portal, using NIL dollars, then you can't hire Dan McDonald. You just can't. It's one of the first questions you ask him. Hey, Danny, glad you came in. How's the coffee? Is it good? Yeah, we'll go out to lunch here in a little bit. Hey, I'm buying Taco Bell. So, Dan, let's talk about transfer portal and NIL. It's got to be an early part of the conversation because to me, that's you can't. That's a non-starter, right? If you can't understand the world you're in and the world you're going into, and it's not going to go back, it's not going to change, you can't be the guy. It's that simple. So that was very interesting reading more on Dan McDonald and what's been going on the last couple of years at Louisville. I also want to go back to someone we talked about yesterday in Cliff Godwin at East Carolina. Because I didn't really bring up Godwin on the list because everything you seem to read and hear, Godwin's staying at East Carolina, his alma mater. And it's not going anywhere. The only job he would want to leave there for, according to all the dirt and the rumors, is if the Ole Miss gig opens up. Then Cliff would be interested. But I did see a couple things that made me want to revisit talking about Godwin. And again, I'll go back to Kendall Rogers' D1 baseball. How bad does Godwin want to coach in the SEC? Do you want to go to a place with, again, more resources, a better chance to, as good as you've done at East Carolina, think about how good you could do with even more resources. And again, this is a very passionate fan base and a passionate community that loves college baseball. Because, people aren't going to call forever. And there's no guarantee the Ole Miss job's even going to open up. I mean, you're in your mid-40s. You got time still. But, at some point, if you let people know long enough you don't want to leave, then eventually people stop calling you because they go, that guy, a waste of time. He's not going to leave. So I think if Godwin wants to take that shot and go to the SEC and compete in the best league in America at a place that has won on a big level with multiple coaches, you could have your opportunity. And the other part of this, because let's just be honest, money matters. According to a post I saw in the Greenville News, Godwin's pulling $600,000. Agreed to a contract extension in 2022. So if you offer 1.2, you're doubling Cliff's salary, roughly. So it's not taking in the 1.5 that you would have to throw out for some of these other big names. So you might save a little bit of money, still make a guy happy by doubling his income. And and that's a coach who's been to the Supers multiple times at East Carolina. It was just had a chance to go back to the Supers again and got upset by Evansville. This past, yesterday? I've said this. I would like, if it's me, I'm hiring a guy that's been to Omaha. But I can't be that rigid. I thought about this too last night. If there's two guys that they're on this list who have not yet been to Omaha, but you should talk to because maybe, again, stepping up to South Carolina with more resources might be the thing to push them over the edge. One is Cliff Godwin at East Carolina. I mean, you're getting to the Supers multiple times. 4 times. And the other guy is Chris Pollard at Duke. I mean, he's been to the Supers multiple times. Took a program, hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in over 50 years, and now they're a perennial team in the dance. So if you want to talk to two guys who haven't been to Omaha but have been really, 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 really close on more than one occasion, Chris Pollard at Duke and Cliff Godwin at East Carolina would make sense because they've achieved a lot on a high level, even though they haven't gotten to Omaha. And then again, we just talked about it when we're spitting through the guys who have been to Omaha. Dan McDonald, can you evolve? If you can't evolve, you really can't hire him at South Carolina because he's got to be able to navigate the NIL space and also the transfer portal. All right, halftime show. We'll come back. Let's hear what David Cloninger said on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah yesterday. That's next on the game. All right, so you're just not feeling like yourself. And you want to feel like yourself again. You miss having energy. You miss having good workouts. You miss recovering where you're not sore. You miss having drive in life. You miss remembering things. You miss sleeping really well. You like to get back to some of that. Well, it could be as easy as low testosterone issues. One way to find out, 803-875-MENS. Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Just call. Set a free confidential consultation with Dr. Dan and the staff. Tell them your personal story. I know it's not easy, but tell them. If they think it could be low T, they'll do some lab work. If it comes back low testosterone, they will then build a personalized program for you, just you, to get you back to feeling like you again. Give it a shot. 803-875-MENS. Call Dr. Dan, the staff of the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Start getting back to feeling like you again. Call the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. What you're talking about and we're talking about and everybody's talking about, obviously, is the baseball search at Carolina. Mark Kingston out after 7 years. That happened yesterday. And this is what happens, obviously, with coaching searches, a lot of rumors and candidates and potential candidates and people who aren't candidates are just trying to get money from their current programs and all that good stuff. We've gone over a bunch of the different candidates. And one of the guys all over this thing is David Cloninger at the Post and Courier. He was on the post-game show with Jay and Elijah yesterday. We're going to rip some cuts from that real quick. Here's David Cloninger. First of all, let's start with the first cut, Ed Bird. Talk about, did he know the Kingston firing was coming?
Well, guys, I think we all knew this was coming. That's why I asked it. I mean, you're never going to ask a coach, or do you think you're going to be back next year? Because what are they going to say? Yeah, of course I think I'm going to be back. You know, you just have to ask if he thinks he's lost the support of the administration, which the way that they worded that contract extension last year, you knew that there was some shaky ground there. So that's why I asked it to get it on the record. You know, it's I'll go and say, yeah, I mean, we all knew it was coming if they didn't get out of the regionals. So, you know, I asked, he answered, put it in the story, and, you know, less than, 18 hours, 14 hours later, it was done. So glad they went ahead and got it done, didn't drag it out any, because Mark deserved better than that to just be twisted in the wind. But we all knew that this was coming and that this had to happen. The results just were not there.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is, you know, you get this done quick. A couple years ago, when there was thoughts about, you know, Coach Kingston's job security coming off the year where South Carolina missed the postseason, you know, that thing was drawing itself out a bit. If I remember correctly, Coach Tanner and Kingston didn't meet for a few days at least. And so everybody was just sitting around wondering what was going on. This time, you knew what you thought you had to do, and you did it, and you got that done. So now you move on to the most important piece, that is hiring the successor and getting that right. And so, yes, quick, to the point. Now you're moving on to the next step, which is the most important step. And we've been talking about this the last couple of days since, you know, Mark got let go, is where does South Carolina stack up with other SEC programs? South Carolina used to be the big dog. How many other dogs in the pack over the last, ever since Ray Tanner left, how many of these dogs in the SEC have passed Carolina? Here's David Cloninger talking about where the Gamecocks stand up to other SEC programs.
Well, Elijah, overall, South Carolina's a top 20 job. The history, the winning dictates that it be so, and it still is. Now, are they as relevant as they once were? No. Are they feared and respected as they once were? No. It's been kind of average at best, at least according to past precedent. When Founders Park was built, it was a jewel. Now it's, you know, it's kind of like, well, it's still maybe middle of the pack, but just other schools in the conference have built theirs up to where they passed Founders Park. So it's another discussion for, do you have to build up the park to get recruits? I don't think you're necessarily at that point. But put it this way, guys, this team was much more talented than the results showed this year. And that's been the case for a lot of the past few years. Now, not the second year. The second year was a disaster that we all knew was coming, and it happened. But since then, it's been pretty good. So it's still a desirable job. They're not going to have any shortage of candidates. They just got to go out and find the right one. They've got to find somebody who can work in this new space that we have for recruiting and all that, and then go out there and get it done on the field.
Yeah, and this new space is important. And we talked about Dan McDonald in the last segment. And a word that now I've been reading into more than one spot is that, you know, Dan has not embraced this new world of NIL and transfer portal. And you have to. You have no choice. You just do. You know, angry man screaming at clouds is not going to, you know, help here. It's just not. The world is transfer portal and NIL. Not, you know, you still build a program. The foundation, in my opinion, will always be high school recruiting. But you've got to be able to bring in guys from the portal. We've seen teams change themselves overnight almost by using the portal correctly in all sports, all collegiate sports, whether it's basketball, football, baseball. Now, have some of those programs sustained more than 1 year of a turnaround? No, but some have. That was just the start of the turnaround. But you've got to be able to use that portal and use it correct. You can go get 50 guys and the 48 suck. It doesn't matter, right? But if you correctly use that portal, it can help you turn things around quick. And NIL is the thing. You got to get money. And right now, until it changes, which it will, you're dealing with collectives. And you're dealing with going to your fan base and continually asking them for more money and more money and more money and more money. That's the world. We're going to get Gary Gilmore's comments from yesterday in this show. We didn't get a chance to get it because of everything that happened with Coach Kingston. Gary Gilmore at Coastal Carolina was almost relieved that he was done because of the NIL situation in the portal.
I would not expect Monty to be the next head coach at South Carolina. I would expect him to be the next head coach at another in-state school on a smaller level.
And that's David Cloninger talking about Monty Lee. There's a lot of rumor and stuff going around that Monty Lee is going to end up at the Citadel. But would Monty love the South Carolina gig? Sure he would. Absolutely. But there's been a lot of talk that Monty's landing spot will be the Citadel. We'll see. And, we talked about this yesterday, and I think Wes brought it up, and they've talked about it. We've talked, multiple shows here have talked about it. It feels like that Monty Lee would be a scenario. I just don't think he's your first scenario. He might be your third. But, and again, Kendall Rogers brought up on D1 Baseball that you have Monty Lee and maybe you bring Landon Powell in to be Monty Lee's assistant, and maybe you're going to bring in some other folks specifically picked on the coaching staff to go with Monty Lee. If that's like your final scenario, that's not a bad scenario if that's what you get to, but just probably not your first scenario. But again, Monty Lee might have a landing spot at the Citadel, and that's been it's been a whisper here recently. So we'll see. We'll get some more David Cloninger coming up, as David also talked about the different candidates for the gig, South Carolina's financial situation, and some more information on the candidates. We're going to get to that on the show as well. Come back, though. We're going to hear from you at 803-404-6100, our Firehouse Sub text of the hour. We'll fire up some of those suckers next here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird, steering the wheel up until 3 here on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford hanging out. Ed Bird's here. Tyler going home early. Getting a little time off today and tomorrow. All right, we have a Firehouse sub-text the hour. We're going to get to it, 803-446-100. First of all, real quick, we have started another Twitter poll at 107.5 The Game on our Twitter X. We're going to start digging into the candidates for the South Carolina baseball opening. Here is the poll of the day. Gamecocks coaching candidate bracket day one. Out of 3 candidates below, who would you rather see South Carolina hire? We haven't even run this baby an hour yet. We already have over 200 votes. The 3 choices are Tom Walter, Wake Forest, Cliff Godwin, East Carolina, Monty Lee, interim coach right now at South Carolina. Right now, Cliff Godwin leads the way, 50% of the vote. Monty Lee, 28% of the vote. Tom Walter, 22% of the vote. We have comments on it as well. We have got, let's see, Josh Elander from Tennessee is someone who should be looked at. Major part of what's going on in that baseball program. And also, what about the coach at Duke? And we have more brackets we'll be doing the next couple of days. So that's where we're at with all that. So that is our Twitter poll. Going to the text of the hour. Got to get that up here real quick. Punch different buttons. Different parts on my phone. Take a look at the text of the hour. There are several young pitchers that are absolutely a must-keep in this program, guys who will be studs. Yeah, we saw some freshman pitchers this year to look good. And they are keepers. And I understand that. And you want to keep them, obviously. Whoever the new coach is going to be, you got to re-recruit your guys, right? But at the end of the day, I just feel like this is a hire that's not just for this year, but this is, you want to be good for a long time, not just for now. And yeah, you want to hold on to some young, promising arms, but the important thing is to make the right hire. Not a quick hire just to save next year's team, for an example, the young arms or recruits or whatever. You want to make the right hire for now and the future, and you hope that right hire can keep as many of these players as possible. But, yeah, they have some young arms that are pretty impressive. They were young, they're raw, but they got a lot of ability. So we'll see where that goes. But, yes, I do agree that you'd love to keep – you'd like to keep Ethan Petrie if you could. You hope you can. There's no guarantee Ethan Petrie even wants to leave. But, hey, guys transfer. And there's been some rumblings that, who knows. But you'd love to keep everybody. But in this world, in transfer portal, you can't keep everybody anymore. So we'll see what happens. But to me, just the important thing is to don't rush into this. Make sure you can't take forever, obviously, but you want to make sure you get the right guy because this program needs the right guy now to get back to where the level it used to be. Because this was a great program. The fan base here is passionate and they love baseball. And you got to get back to where you were. You just do. So thank you for the text. Like always, we appreciate it. 803-404-6100. Thank you very much for that. And we'll keep our eye on the Twitter poll. Again, Cliff Godwin at East Carolina, like I said, my preference, obviously, I'd love to have somebody who's already been to Omaha. Someone who has a resume and they've been there at the highest level, competed for the ultimate championship in college baseball. But the 2 guys who haven't gotten there yet, Godwin and, our boy Chris at Duke, they've been to the Supers at places where, it's easier to win at South Carolina than at Duke and East Carolina with the facilities and, again, the passion, and what you have behind the program. So those are 2 guys. If you're going to talk to 2 guys who haven't been to Omaha, to me, those are 2 guys you would talk to. And Godwin, no one thinks he's going to leave East Carolina. If he does, it'll only be for 1 gig. That's Ole Miss. But how about, do you sit around and look at the SEC going, I'd like to see how I do in that league? Or you look at the Carolina job and say, man, yeah, that's a giant. That's a sleeping giant to get back to where it used to be. And maybe that's the poll for you. So we'll see. But that's the Twitter poll so far on where we're going with all that. Coming up, as we're trying to get more information about all these different candidates, We're going to Drew Diener at ESPN Louisville. We're going to get him on at 2 o'clock. What's trending at 2? We're going to get Drew Diener on. Give us the lay of the land on what's going on at Louisville in the baseball situation there. Dan McDonnell, what does Diener think on the prospects of him leaving to come to South Carolina? What is going on the last couple years? Is the coach truly, not into the transfer portal NIL world that you got to get yourself into? So we'll find out about Coach McDonnell from Drew Diener at 2 o'clock from ESPN Louisville. So we got that coming up as well. And we'll get back to some more David Cloninger. He was on the postgame show talking about, what's going on here with the baseball program in Kingston and what happens moving forward. Again, Monty Lee, the interim. Are you going to have Monty Lee in the mix? Sure. I totally understand that. You want to leave no stone unturned in this thing. But I think, to me, that would be, just me, that would be like plan C. No, Monty Lee won a lot at Clemson, just couldn't get out of the regional at Clemson in 7 years. That's the resume. Why? That's another conversation. You hear a lot of different reasons why. But the resume is couldn't get out of the regional. How much does that weigh in a decision compared to all the positives that Monty Lee could bring? So, right now, Monty Lee, the interim head coach at South Carolina, and there's been talk of Monty Lee going to the Citadel to be the guy in charge there. So, that's going on as well. But we appreciate the text to the Firehouse Sub Text the Hour. We'll get you more than one through the show. We have a bunch of texts, obviously, on this topic of conversation. We'll definitely get to it as we roll through, as we get this thing going. Top of the hour, football in the 1 o'clock hour. Football in the 1 o'clock hour here on The Game. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. And we're going to talk some football. Yesterday we kind of preempted everything because we had so much baseball talk that was the breaking news. We'll get some football in and maybe even, continue our baseball conversation because it's such a big deal. But we'll be talking some football in the 1 o'clock hour. A lot of different stuff. In the ESPN FPI, it's out. We'll get into that coming up next here on the Halftime Show. 1 o'clock is football here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford hanging out with you. 803-446-100. We will, because, obviously the baseball deal is such a huge story. Who's going to be the next head coach at South Carolina? We'll mix a little bit more of that in as well. And if you want to pop in for any of your thoughts, again, feel free. 803-446-100. Love Chevy phone line. Firehouse sub text line. Also at 1075 The Game on our Twitter X. Feel free to hit that up as well with your thoughts on what's happening moving forward. We have a Twitter poll going. You can hit on that as well. We put 3 candidates up today. We'll put 3 more candidates up tomorrow. And we'll keep putting some candidates up and just get your thoughts on who you would like to see get the gig here at South Carolina. All right, in football. The ESPN College Football Power Index is out, the old FPI, for 2024. And what do we make of it? Not too much. It's not the end-all, be-all. We know that. But it's fun to look at it, and it gives us some football to talk about during talking season, which is fun. But, again, just because, we've seen teams highly ranked at a football power index lose to teams lower ranked. It's not, it's just a nice little computer analytical index that uses a formula to rank teams and do projections and predictions and all that stuff. And like I said, it's just fun to blab about. To the surprise of no one, Georgia is number 1 on this list. A projected win total of basically 10-2, according to the College Football Power Index. Not a surprise about Georgia. Oregon is at number 2. Texas at 3. Ohio State at 4. Those 4 teams are projected to win 10 or more games. I believe that Ohio State will and Georgia will. Oregon and Texas, we'll see. But I think Ohio State and Georgia will win 10. Look, Ryan Day better win a lot more than 10. He's only got 12. Better not lose to Michigan. Better get back to the college football playoff. Ryan Day, we talked about this before. People at Ohio State, they look at Ryan Day's record and go, big deal. Haven't beat Michigan in 3 years, 4 years now. You've lost 3 straight. Haven't won a national title, Ryan Day. Yeah, I've been to the college football playoff. We don't care. Win a national title. This is Ohio State, bub. You were handed the keys to a Maserati. So far, you've driven it pretty well, but you can be a lot better. Ryan Day's got to beat Michigan. He got himself in the college football playoff, which with 12 teams should be easy. The Big Ten has gotten better. When you've added UW, who played for the championship last year, Oregon, who almost made the college football playoff. So you've added better quality teams to go with Michigan and Penn State. But still, it's a top-heavy league. Ohio State should have a very, very, very good season, be in the college football playoff, and they should beat Michigan now that the Wolverines have lost a bunch of talent and they lost Coach Kakis. Alabama's picked as a 9-win team. Penn State and Notre Dame have both been picked to win 10. For fun, I looked at Notre Dame's schedule. There are years when Notre Dame, being an independent, had a tough schedule, right? This year, not so much. Whew. This is not tough at all compared to past Notre Dame schedules. One of the toughest games right off the bat at College Station against Texas A&M and Mike Elko's first game. Then you got Northern Illinois. You got Purdue in West Lafayette. Doesn't matter if it's in West, East, North, South Lafayette. Notre Dame should beat Purdue. Miami of Ohio, you're Notre Dame. You should get a W there at home. You get Louisville in South Bend, Stanford in South Bend, Georgia Tech in South Bend, Navy on a neutral field, Florida State at South Bend, Virginia at South Bend, Army at South Bend. You travel to Southern Cal. So first of all, you've got 2 road games that should be difficult in Texas A&M and Southern Cal. But we don't know what Texas A&M is going to be, and we really don't know what Southern Cal is going to be. The game you could, Florida State, but that game is at Notre Dame. Man, that's a cake schedule. And I saw this, I was reading a little deep dive in The Athletic about Marcus Freeman, the head coach at Notre Dame, who has got, again, the Cliff Kingsbury effect. Wow, he's dreamy looking. Let's hire him. Freeman, typically the Notre Dame head coach in the past that has won big, year 3 was the year. Lou Holtz won a national championship in year 3. I believe Dan Devine and Ara Parsegian, I read in this post, also won their national championships in year 3. And Brian Kelly played for one in year 3. Remember, it was a national championship game where they got trucked by Alabama. So year 3 is a big thing for a Notre Dame football coach. And that schedule, really easy for Coach Freeman and the Fighting Irish to have a big season. And the College Football Power Index has Notre Dame winning 10. Penn State's schedule, very easy in the beginning, gets a little tougher late. But, James Franklin, it's a 12-team playoff now, James. The excuses are over, man. Get in. You're not big game James. Franklin has won very few big games at Penn State. But again, the schedule, very easy early. He could conceivably be 7-0 going into the back half of the schedule. It gets tougher, though. Oklahoma's is picked at over 8 wins, 8.2. Tennessee, 8.5 wins. Missouri's also picked as a 9-win team. Their schedule for the SEC is not very daunting, to be quite honest. So that's some of the top teams in the College Football Power Index in their projected win-loss total. South Carolina is sitting at 33rd, basically 6-6. That's where the ESPN Power Index has them, 6-6. I think it's fair. New starting quarterback, basically almost a rebuilt offense in the skill positions. You have a lot of bodies with the offensive line, but that obviously was arguably the biggest weakness on the team last year. Defensively, you look good in end of the season in November. So you're hoping the defense can be stout. But a 6-6, I see it. I see why it's there. And really 6-6, it isn't like wow, but it gets you back into a bowl game. And it gets you turned back around from the 5-7 of last year, going back in the right direction. So a 6-6 isn't what you want, but, that is a step up from what happened last year because of all the injuries. So that's where it's at with South Carolina, 6-6, 33rd. In the SEC, they're right there with Kentucky because Kentucky's picked the same way, 6-6. Ahead of them, SEC squads. Florida, which I do not agree. I do not agree with the computer at all. Like, computer, how drunk are you? Florida, really? A 6-win team? Also, Auburn is ahead of South Carolina. They have Auburn projected to win a little bit over 7 games. Ole Miss, because they don't look at the transfer portal in this metric, is looked at as 8-4, basically. Texas A&M, 7.5 wins. LSU, 8 wins. So that's some of the other teams ahead of South Carolina in this college football power index. All right, let's get with you at 803-404-6100. Grab a call real quick. I believe it's Curtis hanging on. Curtis, we appreciate you calling the halftime show in the game. How you doing, man?
Hey, Terry, you got my name wrong. This is longtime caller Ernest.
Oh, Ernest.
And my question is, if I'm a recruit looking at coming into South Carolina for football, and we just had a change in a basketball coach, now we're having a change in a baseball coach, does that also affect other sports and recruiting like football? And the second part of my question is, with Monty Lee, he was an assistant here, he went to College of Charleston and Clemson as a head coach. Is he a used commodity to bring him back to South Carolina as a head coach?
Well, Ernest, 2 excellent questions. I appreciate it. First question, I don't think it would – I get what you're saying about the volatility of coaches at South Carolina. Would that affect football recruiting because you're seeing all these other coaches getting replaced? I don't think so. I think every sport is its own separate entity, right? And Shane Beamer, we've talked about this. Yeah, 5-7 was the first time Shane had not exceeded preseason expectations. Now, part of that was injuries. Was everything injuries? No, but a big part of it was the offensive line was injured and beat up, didn't have depth. It cratered the offense. Defensively, there were issues. That was much better the final month of the year when you kind of switched up what you did defensively. But it was a disappointing year coming off of an 8-win season with a trip to the Gator Bowl and knocking off 2 top 10 teams. Absolutely a disappointment. I don't think Shane Beamer is at that point where his job's in jeopardy or is on any hot seat. Now, if you come back with another 5-7, now there's going to be some conversation going into 2025. Then you might not be able to sit down in your office because the chair's a little hot. But I don't think there is a hot seat for Shane Beamer, and I don't think what has happened with basketball and baseball would affect football recruiting. So I think like I said, every sport isn't kind of its own thing. The second part about Monty Lee already being in the state and already being at Carolina multiple times, would it be like, I guess, retreading, for a lack of a better term? I guess someone could look at it that way. That, here's a guy that, he's coached 2 different schools in the state. I think got to a super at Charleston, if my memory serves me from what I've studied up on. At Clemson, couldn't get past the regional, lost the gig, has been at South Carolina as a coach, an assistant twice. Maybe someone could look at it like that. I did have somebody say to me, I'd like to have fresh blood, which I don't disagree with that either. Sometimes it's good just to freshen things up and bring in, someone who's highly successful, who might not be coming from the Carolina tree or the Ray Tanner tree or whatever. So I get where you're going, Ernest, on part 2, absolutely. And that might be a thought. But again, I go back to this. Hire the best guy for the gig. That's what you have to do. You can't bring in your heart. You can't bring in your emotions or your feelings. You have to coldly use your mind to get the best guy. It can't be because, I said it with Tyler in the first riff of the show, can't be because a guy played at Carolina, can't be because a guy coached at Carolina, because he's from Carolina, because he loves Carolina. All those things are nice. But the important thing is to hire the best person for the job. We went over it. All the highly successful coaches at South Carolina that we looked at in the high-level sports have not gone to South Carolina or grew up in South Carolina. Get the best person for the job. So, Ernest, we appreciate the call, though. Thank you very much. We'll get back in here. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, and we're sprinkling in some baseball. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Adam Rittenberg from ESPN, as we go back to this college football power index. Rittenberg was on Paul Feinbaum, and he talked about the FPI, and he focused on a couple different schools like Ole Miss and Florida. We'll get into that next. Halftime show. Terry Ford. Ed Bird's here. So it's a big day. A celebrity's in the house. Signing autographs at 3. We're right here on the game. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Ed Bird, as we cook this baby till 3. Football, sprinkling some baseball in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. All right, we went over the ESPN College Football Power Index rankings. South Carolina sitting 33rd, projected to be 6-6 by the old college football FPI. Georgia, the number one team FPI-wise, with a projected total of over 10 wins. The highest win total for any team, which I find interesting, is the Oregon Ducks. They're projected basically 10.8 wins. And a quick scan of the schedule, yeah, Idaho would be tough. You could take Idaho and Boise State together to play Georgia, and Georgia would win. I mean, Oregon would win. Then you have Oregon State, the Civil War, which I love the fact that they're still playing it. Now, Oregon State's going to be interesting. New head coach, lost a lot of guys. You know, this is not going to be the Oregon State team we've seen in the last couple of years under Jonathan Smith, so you should win that one. You travel to Westwood to play UCLA. That should be a W. You get Michigan State at home. That should be a win. Now, Ohio State's showing up in Eugene at Autzen. Maybe you lose that one. You go to Purdue, that's a W. Illinois should be a win. At Michigan's kind of an unknown quantity right now. You can lose that game in Ann Arbor. Then you got Maryland. You go to Wisconsin. You play UW. And that game is also in Eugene. Yeah, I could see a team that loses 2 games all year with Oregon. So I see why Oregon's so highly touted in the old college football power index. All right, back to the SEC. Adam Rittenberg from ESPN was on with Paul Feinbaum, and he talked about a couple different teams in the SEC and their FPI rankings. First of all, this is cut 7, Ed Bird. Adam Rittenberg, why Ole Miss is so low in these new rankings.
Right, and part of that is that so much of Ole Miss's roster construction is through the transfer portal and not through the kind of traditional high school recruiting means. I mean, you just look at who they added, last year in last year's portal, in this year's portal, on both sides of the ball, and I mean they've done remarkable work. I mean, other than Ohio State, I don't know if there's a team that had a more a splashier performance in the transfer portal than Ole Miss did, going all the way through the spring and even picking up some players that I think can help them in recent weeks. But I just don't think they're getting as much credit from an FPI's perspective because a lot of those players didn't come through the traditional high school means. I still think it's a heck of a team who had a great season last year, and now with the expectations of, hey, can you make the playoff? You have enough on both sides of the ball. You've got the quarterback. You've got a head coach in Lane Kiffin who's been there for a while. Can they make that jump? It's going to be fascinating to see, but FPI is certainly not as high on them as some of these other teams.
Well, there you go. The metric doesn't, take into account the transfer portal, which maybe you should fix your metric. In this world, might be a good idea to find some kind of formula that includes the transfer portal. Just saying. It's kind of here to stay. One thing with Ole Miss, they're going to have to, for the first time in God knows how long, they're going to have to deal with the E word expectations, right? People expect Ole Miss to be in the college football playoff. With the talent Ole Miss has, they've added some help on the defensive side of the ball, which has been the problem in the Lane Kiffin era is defense. Consistent defense. So expectations are a huge thing in Oxford because they haven't had them. And the schedule for the SEC is pretty friendly. Their toughest games, Georgia will be in Oxford. Oklahoma will be in Oxford. Ole Miss has to travel to LSU. And roadies, not that many roadies. They're going to go to Florida, but Florida's... By then, Florida might be on their 4th interim coach. Who knows? Florida's not Florida. That should be a win. Arkansas, God love Uncle Sam. It's not going well in Fayetteville. And then the other roadie is at Wake Forest. Can Wake Forest give you difficulty? Sure. If they have the right quarterback and they're healthy, Wake Forest could be a tough place to play under Dave Clawson. But it's a very friendly schedule. Ole Miss should be in the playoff. I think there's a couple games here against some, middle schools in Mississippi. It's a very, very easy schedule for an SEC team. So Ole Miss should be in the playoff conversation. But how are the Rebels going to handle expectations? I think that's a legitimate question. Haven't had them. And we talk about that game against Georgia. With me, Ole Miss, to get to the next level of a program, to be you're up there with with the heavyweights, is to be able to fight in heavyweight fights. Remember last year, Georgia, just punched Ole Miss in the face early and rolled them. Ole Miss is great playing 50, 48 flag football games. But to get to the next level, you got to be able to also win the 17-14 slobber knocker. That physical affair where everybody's getting pounded on. And it's like it's almost like a cage match in the WWE. Can you start winning those kind of games? But this is going to be a very interesting year for Lane Kiffin and his crew at Ole Miss. All right, Adam Rittenberg of ESPN, when he was on Paul Feinbaum, also discussed Florida, because I think Florida's ranking's way too high. Here's Adam Rittenberg on why Florida is ranked so high in the FPI, despite, just not being very good and with a crazy difficult schedule. And, you don't look at it like, wow, what a huge collection of talent that's ready to pop. Here's Rittenberg on Florida.
It's based on roster. It really is based on who they've been able to recruit, and Billy Napier has had a better recruiting cycle certainly this year, even though they didn't have success on the field. But where I struggle with Florida is their SEC schedule plus a non-conference schedule that includes 3 teams that can beat them, and that's just not often the case. And so it's going to be a very difficult road ahead. But if you're an FPI believer, and certainly your viewers and listeners can decide if they are or not, then and maybe you think Florida has the ability to turn it around. They do return their quarterback. That's a big part of this. Graham Mertz had a really nice first season there under Billy Napier's tutelage. They have added some good pieces from the portal. They've recruited pretty well. It's a third-year coach. Maybe this is the breakthrough, but it certainly looks like it's going to be difficult with how many challenging non-conference games they have, plus the always difficult SEC schedule.
Yeah, man, the schedule's a beast. And what I said about talent not ready to pop, yeah, they've recruited well, but that's young talent. And is it ready? And yeah, you got some pieces from the portal, yeah, which I think overall, the thought that Florida's going to win 6 games, yeah, I just don't think they get that high. That schedule's just crazy difficult. But that's what Adam Rittenberg had to say about Florida being too high and Ole Miss being too low on Paul Feinbaum. Again, I love these computer analytical rankings. It's fun to talk about and yip about, and the computer just looks at cold numbers. And I love analytics, man. Love analytics, but I also understand this game's played by human beings, not by spreadsheets. And there's the human factor as an intangible that's involved in all this. I just think, for example, Florida, schedule's really difficult. That talent that Billy Napier has brought in for the last 2 years, again, how much of it's ready to really step in and contribute and help turn around a program? I don't know. But I don't see Billy Napier surviving year 3. He might get through it till the end, but I just feel like this will be the end for Napier. If he gets to the end, it might be a miracle. We'll see, though. Could be completely wrong. Could be completely wrong. Like we talked about the FPI, looking at some of these other teams. Florida State also is in at like 9 wins. Michigan is at 8.5. LSU, like we said before, is at 8. LSU will be interesting. You're replacing a lot of pieces, but you got a lot of talent. You're LSU. You reload. You should just reload. Brian Kelly's defense was abysmal. He fired everybody, brought in a lot of talent on defense, new coaches, new philosophy. If LSU had a decent defense last year, hell, just a bad defense, they might have been in the college football playoff because their offense was so explosive. That defense, bad would have been a compliment. That's how just abysmal LSU was on D last year. All right, football in the 1 o'clock hour. Some stories we have neglected that we got to get to. A couple of them are from the NFL. One, a wide receiver got a ton of cash. And 2, look, I know that folks don't really pay attention to the offensive line. One of the great offensive linemen of all time tragically passed away. So we got to get to those stories. It's coming up next. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, Ed Bird's here. We're running until 3 on the game. What you're talking about and we're talking about, obviously we'll get back to our conversation about the South Carolina baseball job opening. We'll spin back. It's more David Cloninger when he was on with Jay and Elijah yesterday. His thoughts on candidates for the gig, the financial situation at South Carolina, and also, are there any home run hires? So we'll get to that with David Cloninger coming up here in just a little bit, top of the hour. Right now, we're in the middle of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Couple different things. Christian McCaffrey, this just came over in the last 10 minutes, has reworked his contract, the contract extension with the 49ers. McCaffrey, former Panther, Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL this past season, signed a 2-year extension. It averages $19 million per year, and McCaffrey will receive an additional $8 million over what he was scheduled to make in the first 2 years, while adding $24 million in guarantees. Again, without seeing the breakdown of the contract, and that'll come out at some point because I'm not smart enough to figure that out, it's probably saving San Francisco some cap money. And San Francisco is not in bad cap shape right now with all the money they've got out there with different players. Now, again, they're trying to figure out a way to sign Brandon Ayuk, their starting wide receiver, who put up big numbers last year. So it's always, they're top heavy there. You're paying Debo, you're paying Bosa, you're paying your left tackle, Williams, you're paying Kittle, you're paying McCaffrey, you're paying some guys a lot of money compared to what their position would pay them, and you got this thing called a salary cap. So you're always doing the dance if you're the 49ers. Your quarterback's under a rookie deal. A very cheap rookie deal, a massively cheap rookie deal. I think we're giving him gift cards, Ed. His deal is so small. But because you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, you can afford to pay other people, but that window will close at some point when you decide what you're going to do about Brock Purdy, which that's going to be interesting, by the way. When the 49ers have to, like my dad would say, bleep or get off the pod about Brock Purdy coming up here in the next year, I believe it'll be. Will the 49ers pay him franchise quarterback money? Or will they look at Brock Purdy as a guy who has just done a nice job of being a point guard and getting the ball to all of the weapons that the 49ers have? Now, the 49ers look at it like, we just need to go get another point guard on a rookie contract. Because if you're going to pay Brock Purdy big quarterback money, you've got to buy into the fact that Brock Purdy is a true big-time franchise quarterback to pay him that kind of money. Or do you believe we just need another point guard? We got to go find another Brock Purdy on a rookie deal that we can pay on the cheap to point guard to, if you pay Ayuk, Kittle, Debo, McCaffrey. It's going to be very interesting to see which way the 49ers go there. Because if you pay Brock Purdy, you're saying he's a franchise quarterback and he's a big money guy. So we believe he plays like that. And he's not a creation of the Kyle Shanahan system and the playmakers around him. It's going to be fun to watch that. We'll see. All right. Also getting paid was Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson got paid. Big time. The Vikings doling out a lot of guaranteed money. Justin Jefferson is now the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Look, to me, when it comes to wide receivers, I just really believe that the top shelf guys you pay, the true difference makers at wide receiver. I think Justin Jefferson's a difference maker at wide receiver. Jefferson gets over $88 million at signing. I haven't seen the number breakdown because you talk about guarantee. We always say, is it guaranteed for injury or is it truly guaranteed? But $88 million at signing is the big number. Because that's the money that is truly the guaranteed dough. So Jefferson's going to get paid large. And obviously you want to help your rookie quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. You got Jordan Addison on the other side, young wide receiver on a cheap rookie deal. You're set at tight end as well. You got weapons for McCarthy. You got an offensive line that's good. you're setting up the nicest like hammock, right? A nice, comfortable hammock that J.J. McCarthy can lay in so he doesn't have to do a whole lot and he's not going to get killed. And you got an offense that is going to be a lot of play action that's built to the strengths of your quarterback. You're not going to ask him to go out there and wing it 40 times a game, or at least in theory. This is set up nice, and Justin Jefferson's part of it. And your quarterback's on a rookie deal. You can pay your wide receiver lots of money. And the hope is by the time your quarterback is coming off a rookie deal, the Justin Jefferson contract is going to start turning back in your direction to be team friendly. It's a good move. Now, out of the wide receivers that are getting paid in the offseason, A.J. Brown, to me, is a difference maker, a wide receiver. Ask the Titans. They haven't been the same since A.J. Brown left. Ahmad St. Brown in Detroit. Ross St. Brown, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes. Difference maker, a wide receiver. Should get paid difference maker, wide receiver money. Jalen Waddle? No. He's the second best wide receiver on the team. I don't pay him elite wide receiver money at this point. I don't think he's an elite wide receiver. That's just me. You're paying Tyreek Hill, right? Now you're paying Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So, I dug it up. Let's say, how do these contracts intersect? Because Tyreek Hill in 2024 is a cap hit of $31 million. Now, Waddle won't be of that nature. His will be only going to be $9 million. His starts to kick up in 2025. Again, it's not Tyreek Hill, but it does kick up in 2025. Now, the interesting part of this is the guaranteed money stops after next year. And it becomes a really team-friendly deal. So it's not as bad once you dig into it as when you hear on the surface. But still, I don't want to take up a lot of cap space with a guy that I'm not guaranteed is going to be an elite receiver. If you look at the contract breakdown like I'm looking at right now, thanks to Over the Cap, it's a contract that's never going to be like totally a killer. Like Tyreek Hill, $31 million in 2024, $34 million in 2025. That's not going to happen. 2024 is the last year of the guaranteed money on Tyreek Hill. After that, it's not guaranteed anymore. And the dead money cap savings starts to turn in the team's favor. So we'll probably see a new contract for Tyreek Hill after this upcoming season in Miami. Or if Miami doesn't want to do it, then Tyreek Hill will move on somewhere else because Kansas City, that's why Tyreek Hill is not a Chief, because of the contract. So it's very interesting. I got no problem if you're paying an elite wide receiver big-time money because if he's a difference maker and a playmaker and he helps make his quarterback better, that's what matters. Larry Allen passed away, and that's just a shame, man. Larry Allen, again, people don't care about the offensive line unless it's killing you. But Larry Allen passing away at age 52, dying suddenly. This guy was a freak. Just a freakish athlete playing guard. They showed today, I was watching, skimming through some social media today, and they're showing Larry Allen. He's in the Cowboy weight room at the Cowboy complex, and he benches 700 pounds. Let me repeat that again. He benches 700 pounds. There are plates all over this bar. And the Cowboy players are around it, and Larry Allen legit pumps a rep at 700 pounds. It's ridiculous. It's like my car. Then they show Larry Allen at one of these, I don't know if it's a Pro Bowl where they do those little skills competitions or wherever, but Larry Allen, because on the bench, 225 is what they use at the combine, right, when they got the dudes on the bench to count the reps. Larry Allen popped 43 reps of 225 pounds. Yes, 225 pounds 43 times. Then they're showing some video of Larry Allen. One play, and you've probably seen on social media, a Saints linebacker gets a pick and is taken off down the left sideline. You know who catches him to prevent a touchdown? Larry Allen. The dude over 300 pounds who's bench pressing 700 pounds also is a dude running down a linebacker on an interception. And then they show some film of Larry Brown. You know how offensive linemen, the perfect world is they block on the second level, not just the first level? Larry Brown's blocking the entire New York Giant team. Knocking over 11 guys. He takes out the head coach, half the bench. He's up in the stands knocking people, and pancaking folks. Larry Allen was unbelievable. And one of the greatest guards of all time. It's just a shame. Passing away at the age of 52. Just sad. Died suddenly while on vacation with his family in Mexico. All right, so that's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We might get a football text or two in the next segment as we do our Firehouse sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. Also, we'll check our Twitter X poll on candidates that you'd like to see possibly be the new head baseball coach of South Carolina. That's coming up. It's a halftime show. We got Ed Bird over there. Terry Ford hanging here. We go till 3 here on the game. All right, time to check our Firehouse subtext of the hour. 803-446-100. So I love having Ed Bird in to produce the show. Why? Because he's a great producer? No, because he brings Werther's originals. Oh, he's a hell of a producer. I mean, whoops. Love these Werther's originals. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right, so our Firehouse subtext is of the hour. We'll throw a couple at you. Looking at Carolina baseball, the coaching search. Clemson, Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky, all in the supers. Time to refocus the baseball program. And to get a winner. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Again, the goal is you get the right guy to get you back to where you used to be and you need to be. Baseball program is like Southern Cal football. That's an interesting comparison, just top of my head thinking about it. I mean, I guess the idea used to be a great program, one of the best, and it's not anymore. But again, all this does, all you have to do is get the right coach. Now, is Lincoln Riley the right coach for Southern Cal football? I don't know, because there's no evidence that Lincoln Riley's a program builder. Just no, he didn't build a program at Oklahoma. Bob Stoops handed him a really nice ride, didn't he? It might not be what Ryan Day got handed at Ohio State, but it's not far off. Lincoln Riley didn't build a Sooner program. Can he build one? I don't know. But to me, South Carolina, it's not a program that needs to be built. It's a solid program. Mark Kingston, it was fine. It was solid. It was better than average, I guess. It just wasn't to the level that it needs to be. That's all. And it's been passed by multiple schools in the SEC. And you want to start passing them back. You want to get back to where you used to be. But the right coach fixes that. But it's got to be the right coach. You can't take chances here. You got to get a guy. Look, nobody's 100%, right? Nobody. Nobody's 100% guaranteed. You could go and snag, any of the guys we've been talking about. You look at Tom Walter at Wake Forest. He was just in the College World Series with Wake. He'd come here, never get back to the College World Series. No guarantee of anybody coming in and being as fantastic as you hope. There isn't. There isn't one guy is going to be a slam dunk to come in here who is on these list of candidates and for sure is going to do what all Gamecock fans hope for. There's no Ray Tanner to be available to hire right now. But there are guys there with resumes of getting to Omaha. Now, are they perfect? No, of course not. Walter's been once. His program's been really good here lately. This year, they were preseason number 1. You could almost say they underachieved. But Wake Forest has been really good here lately under Walter. We talk about Chris Lemonis. He's, got to the College World Series twice, won it. But since then, We're going to talk with Drew Diener from ESPN Louisville, 93.9 The Ville, about Dan McDonnell. What's been going on? We hear about these whispers that old Coach Dan is not really into the NIL transfer portal world. Is that true? If that's true and Coach O'Connell doesn't want to evolve, that's not really a guy you want to hire, even though he's been to Omaha 5 times. Last couple of years have not been good to Louisville baseball. Another text here, Firehouse subtext the hour. I want a coach that is strong in fundamentals of the game, fielding, laying down bunts, manufacturing runs. I get you. I think here's the thing about the world we're in now with baseball. Really, even more than the other sports, is this whole thing of analytics versus old school baseball. Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't you do both? Why can't you understand the world of analytics and the positives it can bring? Because all analytics is to me is taking scouting to another level by putting numbers and video behind scouting. There, Jimmy can't hit the outside fastball. That's the scout, right? I got to do the spit part. Jimmy can't see the outside fastball. Okay, now the analytic crew just takes that idea and looks at all of Jimmy's at-bats And, wow, Jimmy hits 175 on outside fastballs. Here's the video to prove it. It's just taking scouting to another level in a modern world with technology. Why can't you be an analytic person but also value the positives of old school baseball? There are situations where a bunt's a good thing. Situation where putting the ball in play is a good thing. There's a situation where hitting behind a runner is a good thing. You're in a 1-1 game, there's a runner on third, less than one out. I don't want you up there, trying to hit the ball 500 feet. Yeah, you get your pitch, hunt your pitch and barrel it, so to speak. But you're up there to make contact to get a run home in a 1-1 game in the 8th inning. You're not up there to swing the bat like it's a second inning of a 0-0 game. Why can't we embrace the positives of analytics and embrace the positives of old school baseball and use them both to your advantage? I just don't understand that at times. Why's it got to be one or the other? I don't know. But yes, fielding the baseball is important, and the fundamentals of the game are quite important. Thank you for the text on the Firehouse subtext line, our text of the hour. We'll come back, talk to Drew Diener from 93.9 The Ville. That's next on the Halftime Show. Experience matters. Let's just be honest. Skins in the game, being there, doing that, it's important, especially with your home. If you want to change things in your home, whether it's the look, the decor, you want to put in a new tub, new shower, new appliances, new fixtures, plumbing, lighting, whatever, you want people to know what's going on. Over 70 years of experience at the Nest, 1331 Gadsden Street in Columbia. Call 803-978-2025 and just go and set an appointment, because it's good to go in and see what the folks of the Nest have to offer. They'll walk you around the showroom the showroom's fantastic, by the way. I could live in the showroom. That's how great it is. The showroom's phenomenal. They will take you around and show you all the things they have to offer. You'll get to look through all the different books and things of that nature to get what you want for your home. And you will also bring your idea of your budget, and the Nest can do it within your budget. 803-978-2025. Make that call. Call the Nest. They will make all of your dreams come true for your home. The Nest. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Ed Birds here, punching the buttons, and we appreciate you if you're here in Columbia at 107.5 The Game, 100.5 The Game in Florence, 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. Thanks for hanging. Today, what's trending at 2, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. What's trending at 2, obviously, here in Columbia is who is going to be the baseball coach. Now that Mark Kingston has been fired after 7 years. One name is kind of interesting to a lot of folks, and you see it on all the lists, is Dan McDonnell at Louisville. So we figured, what the heck? Let's get somebody who knows what's up with Dan McDonnell and Louisville baseball. Let's get Drew Diener. 93.9 The Ville, ESPN 680, at Diener says on Twitter X. Drew, you do mornings. I'm sorry to interrupt your nap, and I appreciate you, man.
I wish I could nap. That would be a great gift to have as a morning show host. I just don't unfortunately have it.
Yeah, I did mornings, man. I did mornings for a long time. I got to the point I had to put my car in park at red lights because all I wanted to do was fall asleep.
And I've called baseball games at South Carolina. I did Kentucky baseball games for the worst 4-year stretch in the history of UK baseball, which is saying a lot. So I actually met Bobby Richardson out there at a gate spoke before a game when they were playing Kentucky and probably swept them back in early 2000s.
Man, you did go back in the day, didn't you, my man? Very nice. Mm-hmm. Hey, Drew, we're talking about Dan McDonnell on this list, and a couple of questions. One, I guess we'll start off with the big one from the perspective of being the next baseball coach at South Carolina. Is, first of all, he's rumbled about the administration, the lack of commitment to baseball, some other things. Is he truly a guy that's ready to leap away from Louisville and take another gig?
I would have said no pre-NIL, and post-NIL, I would say yes. I mean, I feel like a year ago, I know he's actually a big tennis fan, so he and I went to the tennis tournament in Cincinnati last year, spent a day with him. But I talk to Dan all the time, but he really made a push last summer. He came in studio with me with a couple of the big baseball boosters to try to boost specifically baseball NIL because, look, you look at they've missed 3 of the last 4 tournaments. That's exactly when NIL started. And I imagine in South Carolina, I would assume your guys' budget down there for NIL is probably, or the resources for it are probably pretty good. And so I think he wants to make it work here. I haven't talked to him at all throughout all this, but since it started to break a little bit yesterday. But I think that wandering eye, I think he looks at what used to work in recruiting here, and maybe it wouldn't work as well. Maybe it can't work moving forward. But I think at Louisville, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, they got to get the money sports right. Like, Kenny Payne was a disaster. He's the worst coach in the history of major college football or basketball, and it really hurt their bottom line. And while football's doing great, that's the things that have to be prioritized here right now. And so baseball, I don't know that it's gotten the attention maybe that he wants it to give, but they're a well-paid staff. I mean, that's the reason they've held off Ole Miss, Mississippi State, people like that for years to keep Dan McDonnell.
Drew Diener hanging out with us, 93.9 The Ville, ESPN 680. Talking about Dan McDonnell, head coach of Louisville, and is there a shot he could be the guy that ends up in Columbia? Drew, again, you just speculating from your experience there in Louisville, do you think that the powers that be and the whole NIL landscape there, do you think baseball's got a chance to get what Coach McDonnell wants? Or do you think, like you said, the priority, obviously basketball's always a priority, football's a big thing as well, and baseball will never get what Dan wants?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what we wonder. I mean, it's tough enough, and I don't know what it's like in South Carolina. I mean, fans here, I think, still struggle with the notion of, paying for the tickets in football or basketball, and then also paying the players' salaries, who are probably making more than a lot of people they're asking them to give money, to get money from. And so, I really, with all these NIL numbers, you never know what to believe. But I know last year when a lot of transfers were going around, I had people on staff say, well, that SEC school gave this kid, $50,000 on top of his scholarship. And what are you going to do at that point? I mean, they produced major leaguer after major leaguer here, but you can talk about all you want, but the difference of, hey, you're not going to have any student debt and we're going to pay you X amount of dollars. I just don't know, if there is the appetite for that here from the average fan. I'm just curious, what's it like there with the NIL for baseball? Are fans are there a few big donors? Is a lot of people giving a little bit, or what's the situation there?
I mean, you have a passionate fan base here for baseball. They love it here.
Yeah.
And so it's probably better than most of your schools when it comes to, because this, Drew, baseball, it depends on where you're at in the country. I mean, there's some places where you get 12 people at a college baseball game. But here, because the passion of the fan base for baseball and the passion of, more, well-oiled donors, so to speak, and the fact that they have won big here in the past, it's probably a little bit better than other places. But like you said, look, man, football rules the roost. It's SEC country. Football is a big thing. Basketball probably is, pulling, ahead of baseball. But there are people here who want to put money toward baseball in the NIL space, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here you got to remember, baseball basically didn't exist till he got here. His first year, now the previous coach helped, laid the foundation for year one here, where they went to the College World Series, and nobody even knew. I mean, that was I think maybe their second ever postseason appearance in the history of the program. People still don't know how a regional works here. I mean, it's like explaining advanced math that it's a double elimination four-game tournament to people. We're the home team. Why are we batting first? Like, my gosh, we figured it out. But so he invented. There's a hole in the calendar right now. We're talking about this on our show today because we're used to being in the postseason with baseball because we were spoiled, for a decade almost. Go back to the College World Series and. So, yeah, I mean, he's great. I'd love to tell you something horrible about him, so you guys say, we can't talk about that guy. But, I mean, the guy sends me the Dr. Elko Monday morning motivation podcast every Monday. He didn't do it this week, so if you want to add the tea leaves together, maybe he was too busy talking to you guys.
Drew Dieter hanging out with us, 93.9 The Ville and ESPN 680 in Louisville, talking about Dan McDonnell and the possibility of Coach McDonnell leaving Louisville and maybe coming to Columbia. All right, the one thing I did read, and this is interesting that you brought up about the NIL stuff where he's trying to, gather funds. A couple things I've read is that McDonnell, one of the reasons possibly that Louisville has struggled the last couple of years compared to what they've been before is that he is not embracing the transfer portal and NIL, sort of clinging to the old school way of running a program. Is that just me reading stuff on the internet, or is there any truth to that possibility?
I think he'd embrace the hell out of it if he had the money. I mean, somebody said that on our show the other day. I'm like, but that sounds like something people say because they just assume that and don't know any better. But, I mean, we have all these fake takes from listeners now about, it's gotten stale in the recruiting. And you're like, we never kept up with baseball. Get out of here. He's very innovative and it's not that he isn't embracing the transfer portal. The transfer portal probably isn't embracing Louisville as much because I don't think there's the money that there appears to be at other schools. Again, it's not like the stuff is public record if you never find out. No, he would have. This is not like Dabo Swinney not wanting transfers. This is not that. So I'm sure that rings like, down in that part of the country a little bit. But no, this is the guy who would embrace anything. If the rules change, I mean, he like the women's basketball coach here, Jeff Walls. I mean, he has survived in the new NIL era because he's like, okay, these are the rules. We'll go play by them. And then I don't know how they've gotten a little more money with women's basketball than with baseball, but it seems like they have. But no, somebody said it to me last week on like our text line. I'm like, you guys don't know Dan McDonnell.
Drew, all right, last thing on this topic. I want to ask you one thing about Louisville basketball before I let you roll. All right, scale of 1 to 10. Chances of Dan McDonnell leaving to take the South Carolina gig in your mind?
I will say this, the other years that other schools have come after him, I've just been like, no, he's happy here. His family loves it here. His wife, Julie, have been, love this town, have embraced it. And when he didn't go back to Ole Miss a few years ago, I was like, well, this is where he's going to stay. But then the rules changed. So I will say this is the most fearful I have without having any inside knowledge of it, just because I know what his mentality was a year ago. I know what he's tried to do since. And you have people around here acting like the game's passed him by. I'm like, you all going to see how much it's passed him by when we bring somebody else in here. It's not as good. And I think that's, for me, this is probably DEFCON 2 for me if I'm comparing the last however many years.
And, I saw like it was about $1.35 million roughly is what McDonnell's getting. Is that around the ballpark?
That sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, they don't even charge admission here for most of the games. They never charged for any until like, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago, where then like your season tickets are like $5 a game for the conference games and like a couple of other, like the Vandy game or the Kentucky game. And the only reason they do that is so the opposing team doesn't steal the seats. And people kind of complained about that it wasn't free. It's like a JV baseball game costs $7. And this is people are complaining about some of that. So we're, while we invented baseball bats around here, essentially, it's for college baseball, like again, when I was growing up, I wouldn't have even known they had a team around here.
Right.
So it's a little different. And I've been around the SEC. I've called a lot of Kentucky losses around the SEC. And I know the passion in South Carolina. And the high school talent always seemed like it was great in South Carolina, too. But that was 20 years ago. So.
All right, Drew Diener, 93.9 The Ville, ESPN 680. Real quick before I let you go. All right, two-part question. First of all, the Kenny Payne experience at Louisville, you've lived through it. Give us a little thought on that first.
Disastrous, the worst hire in the history of sports, lazy, entitled. Let's see, I leave anything out there? And then being told by, like, the Corey Alexanders of the world that we're stupid because we think it sucks when we know it sucks and we know it's not going to change. And it was I challenge anybody at the major power level to find a worse hire in football or basketball than him. And a lot of it was because of pure laziness. And some of the stories that people who are involved with will tell you. It's funny, Luke Hancock works with us. He just walked in about 10 minutes ago, and he went to the first workout today, and he's like, it's just night and day different. There's a plan. There's energy. The coach is like asking, me any advice on certain things, and as you should ask a former MOP advice like that. It is, I don't know what was worse, having to live through crappy basketball or being told by some of the national types, whether it's Jay Williams or Corey Alexander, that we're stupid because we don't understand that this is going to change, when in fact it never changed.
I always love that. It's crappy basketball you're watching in crappy basketball. You don't understand.
Yeah, you got to give him time. And it's like my horseman of the apocalypse of coaching changes when they start blaming fan negativity. I can't remember all four of them, but like blaming fan negativity. And then my favorite is it's starting to affect recruiting. No. 4-28 affects recruiting.
Right. Hey, what do you think of Pat Kelsey getting the gig? He's a guy from these parts.
Oh, love him. You're not getting him back. I mean, he's great. Here's how I don't know how he did this. Like, it was the day after he got hired. We're at the minor league ballpark doing our show, and I'm doing with their general manager who's been a fixture in the community. And we both get a text in the middle of it from a weird number that says, go Bats, that's the team, and go Reds, because he's a big Reds fan, and it says signed Pat Kelsey. I'm like, I don't know how he got either of our phone numbers that fast, but I've never been texted by the little basketball coach in my entire life.
Oh, that's too good.
So it's pretty cool. We love him. His energy, and that's why it's so great. His energy would be great anywhere, but you compare it to the laziness and lack of energy and lack of detail of the Kenny Payne disaster, it's about. If I express my thoughts about the Kenny Payne, I don't know if you're getting the period.
Drew, you got to get more opinionated about Kenny Payne. Get off the fence, Drew.
Give me going on Nolan Smith too. It was equally as lazy as inside. I'll go on that all day. But yeah, Kelsey's exactly what we needed around here.
Yeah, good deal. Drew Diener, 93.9 The Ville, ESPN 680. At Diener Says on Twitter X. Drew, appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks a lot. If this thing percolates more, we might bug you again. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, please. Oh, you don't want him. He's no good. He's terrible for sport. Doesn't embrace anything. Now, back off. All
right, we'll talk to you, man. Thank you, bud. See you now. All right, there's Drew Diener. 93.9 The Ville and ESPN 680 in Louisville. We'll come back, have some thoughts on what Drew just said about Coach McConnell. That is next on What's Trending at 2, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. Terry Ford, Ed Bird, we're kicking it. Halftime show till 3 on the Game. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry here on the game. Getting back to the search, the Carolina baseball search, I thought Drew Diener, very interesting comments regarding Dan McDonnell. And basically, Drew Diener says, because one of the things we brought up to open the show was I'd read a couple things about Dan McDonnell and not embracing the new world of NIL and the transfer portal. And that's, to me, a non-starter. I can't hire you. If you don't care if you like it or not, it's the world you're going to have to coach in and live in, and you have to embrace it. And going back to Dabo, here's what I don't understand. I'll give you the example really quick. And I'll go back to my Baltimore Orioles. Yes, I had part ownership. The Orioles for a long time were owned by a man named Peter Angelos. And Peter Angelos did not want to sign players from the Dominican. I won't go into why, but he just didn't want to sign players from the Dominican. Despite the fact that a large percentage of players in Major League Baseball, really good ones, are from the Dominican. And someone said to me, that is sort of like an NFL GM stating, I am not drafting players from the SEC. You're shutting off a huge pipeline of talent. For what reason? Why aren't you signing Dominican players? Well, I don't want to. Why? Well, here's my reason. Well, that makes no sense because you're shutting off a huge pipeline of players that have helped other teams be highly successful. So why wouldn't you look at the transfer portal? Because that is a pipeline to make your team better. All this other mumbo-jumbo is mumbo-jumbo to me. This is, if nothing else, an avenue to improve your roster. And no one's roster is so wonderful and perfect it can't be improved by the transfer portal. Well, Dabo's line of a lot of people couldn't play for Clemson. Well, dude, how'd you do in the college football playoff last year? Oh, you weren't there. How was your 10-win season? Oh, you didn't have one. So don't tell me of all these players in the portal, no one was good enough to play at Clemson. You want to cling to an old school philosophy, and that's fine, but you are shutting down a pipeline of talent. That's what I don't understand. And I read, Dan McDonnell wasn't embracing the transfer portal and, the NIL space and all these other things. And we get Drew Diener saying, well, he's not embracing it because he doesn't have the money. Louisville isn't coming through with the financial backing to be able to use the portal. Because, again, when you use the portal, you know what these guys want? Paid. Again, like it or not. That's the world. You got to be able to drop an offer on a player because he's getting offers from everybody else that's interested. And a player that's any good, you think you're the only team chasing him when he's in the portal? Of course not. So maybe all this connects to Louisville hasn't been as good lately because they can't get the talent that they were getting because they don't have the money to compete in the transfer portal / NIL space, which could lead to Dan McDonnell being open to leaving. Now, Drew Diener also said $1.35 million sounds about right. So right now, Dan McDonnell's making between 1.3 and 1.4. You've obviously maybe the frustration at Louisville means you don't have to go higher than 1.5, but you're going to have to pay probably 1.5 to get Dan McDonnell from Louisville at the very least. Or maybe again he's so frustrated he might show up for less than he typically would if he wasn't frustrated. Just saying. But that's kind of the lay of the land on Dan McDonnell, and I appreciate Drew Diener from 93.9 The Ville and 680 ESPN Louisville for jumping on and give us a little information about Coach McDonnell. All right, David Cloninger was hanging out with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show. We're going to grab a few cuts here, Ed Bird. David Cloninger, let's get to cut 4. David was discussing the various candidates that he has been posting up for the open USC baseball gig.
Well, see, now you guys are asking me who I prefer, and if you ask me who I prefer, I'm like J. David Cloninger. I guarantee you this team will win under my leadership, but, we can't go there. But guys that I know that will be discussed and that are held in high esteem by the South Carolina brass, Tom Walter at Wake Forest, Chris Pollard at Duke, Skylar Meade at Troy, Dan McDonnell at Louisville. That's just a few of the names that I think kind of pass the quote-unquote eye test, as in they're established, they know what they're doing, they've got some familiarity here. But there's also guys that's like, these are guys that will say yes. Now, I know that Landon Powell is a popular name. Love Landon to death. But it's a case of, and I put it out this morning, so I can put it out again now, just be honest with yourself. If you're one of the guys trumpeting Landon, if he wasn't a Gamecock, would you care what the coach at North Greenville is doing? You just have to ask yourself that. I love Landon. I do. And if he wants to come here as a hitting coach or something, fine. Awesome. Great. Love to have you. But D2 to the SEC, the point is that not that he couldn't succeed. You got to hit a home run this time. You failed on 2 straight hires after this program was at the very top of the sport. You have to have a grand slam home run this time. You can't take any risks. And a D2 coach to the SEC, no matter if he's an alum or not, is a risk. Now, he might get contacted, but I don't expect that to happen.
I mean, look, obviously David brought up Dan McDonnell, Tom Walter. Also hit our guy at Duke, who has done a phenomenal job, Chris Pollard. And talking about Skylar Meade at Troy, the one thing with him is that resume is not that long, especially compared to the last 3 guys we just talked about. And where you're speaking of home run hires, you just have a better chance with, a McDonnell, for an example. That's a guy you got a better chance with, or a Walter. Guys who have been, been there, done that for what you want to do. Pollard hasn't been to Omaha yet, but he's been to multiple supers at Duke and built that program from, forget from the ground up. He had to dig underground and bring it back up. Did Chris Pollard. They hadn't been to an NCAA tournament in 55 years before Pollard showed up. Their body of work is just bigger than Skylar Meade. Not to say Skylar Meade won't be a hell of a coach, but just his experience level is nowhere near the other 3 guys. And like David said, you want a home run hire here. Nobody's 100% guaranteed, but you want a home run hire. And then talking about Landon Powell, look, Gamecock fans have told me how much they love Landon Powell. But I think David makes a great point, and we talked about this here on the show as well. If Landon Powell was a former Volunteer or a former Wildcat or a former Crimson Tide, would you even talk about that record in Division II? And that is just, look, Landon Powell ended up being fantastic. And like David said, you want to bring him in to be an assistant to get the lay of the land coaching in the SEC. That's one thing. But grabbing a guy from Division II and making him a head coach at Carolina when this choice is so vital, that's a larger leap than taking a Pollard or a Walter or a McConnell. So I totally agree with where David's going. All right, let's see. Last one with Cloninger talking about, real quick. South Carolina's financial situation. Cut 5, Ed Bird.
Well, guys, it is a case of like, these are the realities and these are what you want. If you want to have a winning program for what you're spending now, I don't know if that's feasible. The fact is that the game has changed all across college athletics. Revenue sharing is coming in, and you're going to have to decide for what sports you want to invest in to get more money coming into the program and what sports can fall by the wayside. I can tell you now with full authority that South Carolina will never be one that just says, well, let's scale back baseball. Baseball is what South Carolina has done consistently. Even, when football was not so good, when men's basketball was not so good, the programs that make money, baseball was the one you could rely on. They're not going to give that up. I know it's been 12 years since they last got to the College World Series, but they're not going to give up what South Carolina baseball has built a reputation as being, which is a great, consistent winner. It's taken a hit over the past 12 years, but it's not destitute by any stretch of the imagination. So I realize it's one of those things, well, you just got to give more money, to which I always realize there's a limit to that well. If you're going to give football, basketball, just, how many times can you keep asking the same folks to give their hard-earned money? So it's a case of like, I wish I could have a, definite answer for you, but you just got to find a way. You got to find a way to get that money into the program and say, whatever you need, you're going to do it. And if that's stadium improvements, if that's NIL money, you just got to go find a way. I mean, this program's greatest perch was built on the phrase of win anyway, right?
Yep.
Now for all the boosters who want to have the baseball program they had, you got to give anyway. It's that simple. I mean, the game has changed, and it's not just good enough to go out and recruiting anymore.
You got to spend money. David hit it right. You gotta spend dough, whether it's coach, facilities, coaching staff, NIL space. That's the world. That's the world we live in now with college athletics. All right, we'll get back in. Greatest day in the history of the world, June 4th. Sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Next on the Halftime Show here on the Game. Greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird hanging here till 3 on the game. Then Jay and Elijah will take over with the postgame show. All right, greatest day in the history of the world. We'll hit a few of these. 2019, San Francisco Giant manager Bruce Bochy wins his 1,000th game. Who won the World Series last year? Texas Rangers. Who's their manager? Oh, Bruce Bochy. 4 of those babies now, I believe, for Bochy. Won 3 with the Giants. Just again, one of the things, and I love my analytics, I do. But the one thing about the new world of baseball, Major League Baseball, is they've tried to diminish the manager. Like you hear this, the manager only matters for 2 or 3 wins a year. No, you might say that in the managing of a game. But I say this all the time, managing a Major League Baseball team for 162 games over 6 months, not including spring training, you as a manager, it's even more important what you do between games. The culture, the leadership, the day-to-day operation and day-to-day running of a baseball team for guys who are together 7 days a week. You play roughly 6 games a week. And what you do between games, to me, matters as much as managing the game. Bruce Bochy is one of the best. You know, Astros won the World Series. Guess what? They had Dusty Baker, old school manager. These new age general managers and front offices, they want to be collaborative with the managing of the team. Let's collaboratively manage the team. No, how about you be the GM, you give me the players, you give them to me, and I'll manage it. What do you say? I still believe that's a great formula. Bruce Bochy showed it again last year by winning the World Series with the Rangers. This day in 2009, Randy Johnson earns his 300th win, becoming the 24th Major League pitcher to reach the milestone. You don't see that much anymore. You just don't. Pitchers getting 300 wins because starting pitching, again, we talk about manager being diminished. The starting pitcher has been diminished in Major League Baseball. And wins, I mean, look, I won't lie. I don't look at wins when I'm checking out stats for pitchers anymore. I get to that like 7th. I'm looking at all these other stats, and then I'll eventually look at the one-loss record. And you see it now. The old days, you weren't winning a Cy Young Award in Major League Baseball unless you had like 20 wins, right? Or near 20 wins. It's not the case anymore. Pitching is judged differently now. And wins aren't a thing because, again, pitchers don't go deep in games anymore. Starting pitchers, you know, to get a win a lot, you got to pitch deep into a game. You don't go 6 innings or 100 pitches or whatever. A lot of times you get no decisions. Or you have a lead, you leave the game, and the bullpen blows it for you. So a rare bird, a pitcher with 300 victories. But Randy Johnson, that milestone in 2009. One last one, 2008. The Detroit Red Wings won the Stanley Cup. It was their 4th Stanley Cup win in 11 years. They took out the Pittsburgh Penguins in 6 games. That's the last time the Detroit Red Wings won the Stanley Cup. They were an iconic NHL franchise through the 90s and through the new millennium. They had won multiple Stanley Cups, Hall of Fame players. Every year the Red Wings were in the mix. They had this great rivalry with the Colorado Avalanche where they just beat the hell out of each other all the time, and it was a cool Sports Center highlight. Red Wings now have become one of the worst franchises in hockey. They have not been to the NHL playoffs since the 2015-16 season. They're working on almost 10 years without even making the playoffs in Detroit. Unbelievable. Well, that's the greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK here on the Halftime Show with Terry Ford and Ed Bird running the show for us up until 3 on the game. And real quick, we appreciate you listening, whether it's Columbia, Florence, or Myrtle Beach on the Game Network. You can also get the 107.5 The Game app, download that baby, iTunes, Google Play. Walk around your phone, listen to us anywhere. Anywhere. And then, of course, if you're watching on Game TV, we thank you very much. Our YouTube channel at the Game TV/radio, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, powered by our buds at Integrated Media. Our Gamecock Central has an interesting post. Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball was talking yesterday and was discussing the South Carolina head coaching search for the baseball team. And, Kendall basically said, look, the days of taking 2-3 weeks to wrap up your search and to hire your coach is over because transfer portal's open. You want to be chasing players in the portal to make your team better, and you can't do that if you don't have a coach. So the way the windows are set up, you really have to be efficient in getting the right guy. And, I do believe you have to get the right guy. Again, you don't want to take a month. You don't want this thing to drag out. You don't want to be indecisive. You want to be efficient, but it's more important to get the right guy. We had a text earlier about you don't want to lose some of these good young pitchers that South Carolina has in the portal because, you don't have a head coach. I agree with that. But I said this earlier today, hiring the head coach is not just about 2025, but it's about 26 and 27 and 28 and 29. You want to get the right guy who can have you in contention year after year after year for a long period of time. And if 2025 is kind of a wonky year because, of circumstances and getting that right guy, then it is. But you can't take forever. That is true. Kendall Rogers talked about, just how important it is to be efficient in this search. And good, and in the post here on Gamecock Central, the good news is the major candidates are all available right now. They're not still in the NCAA tournament. Cliff Godwin at East Carolina, Chris Pollard at Duke, Tom Walter at Wake, Dan McDonald at Louisville. These guys are all available right now. So is Skylar Meade at Troy and North Greenville's Landon Powell. You got a couple of assistants at Tennessee and LSU whose names have been thrown out, like Josh Elander at Tennessee, for an example. But, I don't think those are like level two. Level one, well, let's see what's it. Level one is getting a guy who has been to Omaha, a 1A, I'll say. 1B, I think, is getting a coach who has gotten really close and has a hell of a resume, just hasn't made it to Omaha for whatever reason, like Pollard or Godwin. Level 3 would be an up-and-coming head coach from like a group of 5 program, like Meade. Level 4 would be an assistant coach at a very successful program. That's just how I feel it would go down. That's my guess. But all the guys that are available or that you're interested in, they're really available at this time. An interesting story that Kendall Rogers told about being at Omaha last year. He was talking to LSU's head coach, Jay Johnson. And here's a quote from Rogers. Last year in Omaha, I was sitting there talking to Johnson in a hotel lobby. They're playing for a national championship on a Friday, and he's pulling his hair out. And I'm like, man, what's wrong? And he's like, well, all these teams are getting guys out of the portal, and I'm here in Omaha. And I know I should be happy about playing for a national championship, but I'm also trying to land guys out of the portal. That's the world now. Here's a dude who's going to play for a national championship, and instead of being 100% locked into the moment, he's also trying to recruit dudes out of the portal because he's losing out to teams who aren't at Omaha, who are free just to start mining the portal without worrying about actually playing a game. That's just the world. It just is. Craft Beer Card is back. You can spend $30 a brewery for 12 craft beer locations, $360 value, only $79. Go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals. We'll come back. Firehouse Sub, text the hour at 803-404-6100, and we'll get you ready for the post-game show with Jay and Elijah. That's coming up. Terry Ford, Ed Bird, Halftime Show here on The Game. Time for the old Firehouse Subtext of the Hour halftime show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird, Jay Phillips actually on the game TV today because usually we have the camera on Tyler. And I know that, we should have the camera on you.
I was only here for AC/DC, Terry, but whatever.
And now you're in, man. You're on the game TV, so don't pick your nose like you usually do when you're with us.
I mean, listen, does it really, at this point?
Who cares?
Yeah, I mean,
I've noticed when guys, I shouldn't say people, when guys reach a certain age, they really stop caring.
I don't care anymore.
You've been around that old guy at the gym.
I am that old guy at the gym.
You're not that old guy at the gym. You're an old guy. You're not that old guy.
All right. Well, thanks.
The old guy that walks around the locker room with nothing but tube socks for 3 hours. You that guy yet?
Don't do that. No.
Exactly.
I don't
All right, Firehouse Subtext the Hour 803-446-100. Analytics are trash. Get an old school gut feel baseball coach like Dan McDonnell. His assistants can handle the NIL. It's interesting. I was trolling around for different candidates, right? And just reading more. And I saw a thing with McDonnell. There was conversations that he hasn't embraced the transfer portal and NIL, and that's why Louisville has fallen back the last few years compared to what he did before. Mm-hmm. So we had Drew
They've
Diener.
only been to the playoffs once
last
since
4
COVID.
years. Yeah. So we've got Drew Diener on here from 93.9 The Ville and ESPN 680 in Louisville. And said, Drew, be honest, there's stuff out here saying old Coach Dan hasn't embraced the new world of NIL and transfer portal. You're there all the time. Tell me what you think. He goes, well, he might not be embracing it because they're not giving him any money to embrace it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing with McDonnell is he's not getting the money to be able to navigate the transfer portal because their NIL is just not happening there.
Which is interesting because that's a money town. I don't know right now. I think that school, my opinion only, okay, is so hyper focused on trying to bring basketball back from the dead that it may be to some degree at the expense of football and baseball. I don't know that, but
well, it's a basketball school.
But you've worked in Kentucky. I mean, and it's a basketball school first, absolutely. But this is a school that produced a Heisman Trophy winner not that long ago.
Well,
and has been, Dan's taken them to a bunch of World Series.
To be fair, their football facilities, they've dumped a ton of money in it, but it's always going to be first and foremost a basketball school.
Sure, that's fine. I got no problem with that. So, I don't know where that is. Now, to the text, and I don't know the full context, so I'll be careful here, like analytics are trash. I don't believe that. But if you're strictly going by what the computer spits out to tell you to do in a situation, then at that point, and I've seen this, like pretty soon you're going to have AI for fun somewhere calling a game, whether it's a football game, a baseball game. Might be harder for AI to dial up a basketball game, but I don't know. I don't know. But analytics aren't trash. Analytics are like anything else in sports, in life, just the further evolution of being able to amass a bunch of statistics in an effort for you to make a better decision. But yeah, there's still times when you need to, go by your gut. You know
that again? That was pretty impressive.
I'm
gut
not
thing,
going
that
to
was
do it.
pretty
No,
good.
once is good.
Your gut. I love that face.
But, because I know people feel that way, and I get it, I mean, but if you took Bobby Cox or Joe Torre, the two greatest managers of their generation, but plopped them down today, they're going to use some of those new analytics to guide their decision making.
I say this about analytics all the time, and you and I have probably had this conversation over the years on the show. It's just taking old school scouting by the eyeballs and putting data behind it. It's like anything. It's like, I go to you as a pitcher. You pitched in high school. Jay, you really struggle throwing a fastball in the inside part of the plate. And maybe you're going, well, I don't think so. Okay, really? Okay, here's the analytical data behind it, and here's frame-by-frame video evidence of how much you struggle. Right. Oh, bleep, I guess I really do.
Yeah.
All it is backing up scouting with data and information and video and numbers. So people who hate analytics, it's like, no, this is just taking scouting and basically on steroids. But the problem, and I said this earlier today, why can't you blend both?
Yeah.
Why can't you use all this data to help you gain knowledge, but why can't you sit in the dugout and manage by feel? If you got a guy who's killing, let's say, okay, you got a dude who goes 1, 2, 3, comes in the 7th or 8th inning of a game, 10 pitches, gets the side out in order, and is dominant.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you say, screw the numbers and analytics and rolls? I'm bringing this cat back to start the eighth inning because he's killing it.
He's feeling good. And you've got to do that. There might be a kid who, to go to your point, but in the reverse, there's a hitter. Well, all right, there's a lefty up here who is really good with that outside change, and he can just get dudes to swing away on the other side and ground it to the opposite side, and just But he's 4 for his last 6. And he's feeling good about himself. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna let him go up there and swing away. There are times when you say, damn the statistics or whatever, and I'm fine. And to answer your question, why can't you do both? I think there are some that do, and I think as more of this comes around, look, I'm a believer by and large in a lot of things, primarily being, more cyclical, not linear. I think eventually some stuff comes back around to where I can't just rely on what a computer says.
The last 2 guys that have won the World Series as managers, Bruce Bochy, Dusty Baker, old school guys.
Sure.
Old school guys.
Sure. But I guarantee you that those clubs have departments that provide a lot of info.
And then they give it to them. Now you go manage.
Hey, Skip,
you go manage.
You go.
You and Elijah coming up, post-game show.
A lot
Ed
more
Bird,
baseball.
fine job. We'll do it again tomorrow here on the Halftime Show. Thanks for hanging.